A few years ago, my family and we boarded a plane to Paris. And when we shuffled in, my two brothers and we took up a row of 4 with our 3 bodies, and I sat squished between them, a fact I lamented aloud due to the predictable possibility that I may fall asleep on this red eye. And since neither of them are comfortable with physical contact, I could never be able to lean my head against either shoulder. And so Matthew, the older one, he stingingly slid to the center and allowed me to sit between him and whatever lucky stranger had the aisle seat. But what sat down beside me moments before the flight attendants came by, what sat down beside me moments before the compact doors above our heads were closed, what sat down beside me was a young girl. Okay, well, she was a little older than I was, with dark curls and red eyes and this ratty Kleenex, and she was sobbing. And as she buckled her seatbelt and the plane ran down the runway, I sat so nervously as she stifled her sniffs, and I handed her a Kleenex. Odd, now that I think about it, we never really did say all that much to each other. But she took the Kleenex with a smile and a squeak, and I smiled back, maybe out of nervousness or helplessness, I don't really know, but we smiled, and maybe that was all she needed. She slept. I remember she slept after that. She arched her neck and lowered her seat and slept for hours in what I can only imagine was pure exhaustion, and I wrote, as I always do. I turned on that sad little light above your head and took out some paper and worked on some dialogue for a play I was writing. Sat, wrote, thought some more, sat, wrote. And then I wrote her a letter. What possessed me to do such a thing, I suppose I'll never know, but for now, I'll chalk it up to curiosity, consideration, concern, an assumption that maybe she just needed one. A letter, that is. I started it and wrote it to the girl sitting next to me. And although it did start with this alarming need to ask if she even spoke English, I proceeded to continue in English anyway and introduce myself, where I was coming from and where I was going, which of course began as Montreal and Paris, respectively. But then grew into stories about my childhood and my grandparents, and how much I missed my grandfather, to stories about university life and concerns about grad school, and stories about where I wanted to go, where I think I'll be, where I never wanted to be ever again. Every thought, every concern, every want and worry and waste of will I shared, penned down effortlessly. I gave everything that I had, everything that I wish I could have in return, and then I gave her more, my email address, and a reassurance that this moment, whatever it may be, this moment of loneliness, helplessness, this feeling of loss or pine or gloom over your head, it's gonna pass. And you don't have to be alone, and from now on, you will never have to be if you don't want to be. And when we landed, I handed her the letter, and she thanked me, and as she left, I watched her wipe at her eye and sigh and inhale and heave and walk away and not look back, and I thought to myself, goodbye, beautiful stranger, it was so nice to have never met you. But 2 months later, she did indeed email me back, and it is the longest email I have ever received, a letter of stories and emotions and equal concerns and wonders, and full of thanks that we met on that plane, and whilst we're probably never going to meet again, we will always have this one very quiet plane ride leaving Montreal, a city that she lived in for years and now was returning home to Paris for an indefinite amount of time, leaving behind a lot of unfinished business and events and people and entire lives that she would now never quite get around to living. And for a moment, I felt lost together with her. I did that. I managed to shrink the world down to a handful of minutes between two strangers to share a genuine moment of vulnerability and comfort. I did that. I made her feel less alone, more understood. And why isn't that a 3-credit course in university? Why isn't that a requirement for grad school? Why isn't that exercise, that active reaching out to others equally important to get on in life? Sincerity is inside all of us, because regardless of who we are or what we do, we all have this very bright light of loveliness and decency inside all of us, because it's important to remember that active listening is to forget about who you are and what you're supposed to be doing in this situation, and just take in everything that is happening around you and connect briefly. Everyone can listen, because aren't we all packing for Paris? Aren't we all always on the brink of decision making, always at crossroads in a fast world, reworking timetables, reorganizing priorities? Aren't we all chasing that maybe adventure and hoping that we've left soft footprints? Aren't we all not strangers in that way? There are so many beautiful lessons and experiences that you can just reach out and take, because it's okay to be hurt. Just don't let it stop you from loving. It's okay to be wrong. Just don't let it discourage you from learning. And it's okay to be scared. Just don't let it hold you back from living. All of it is okay in the end. We're not as alone as we might sometimes feel. We coast alongside one another to different destinations, but we all carry the same baggage. And the plane ride, the ride itself, whether it be those 10 hours of traveling or those 10 minutes with a stranger, they can last your lifetime if you just take the time to listen to a new story from strange lips that with time will sound strikingly familiar. These people and their experiences and what they have to offer you can lengthen your reality and broaden your world. Thank you.